Welcome to This Explainer. Listen, today we are looking at a story of just unparalleled scale, innovation, and honestly, quite a bit of drama. We're dissecting the incredible journey of a brand that needs absolutely zero introduction. I mean, just picture the visual contrast here. They started out in this dusty, dimly lit garage and somehow evolved into those gleaming, glass-paneled retail temples we walk past today. Just holding one of their devices is literally considered a status symbol all over the world. We are, of course, talking about Apple. So how exactly did a company started by a couple of kids tinkering with electronics evolve into the most valuable company on the planet? It is a truly fascinating narrative of technological genius, marketing mastery, some bitter betrayals, and ultimately, redemption. So get comfortable, because the sheer scale of the company we're dissecting today is totally going to blow your mind.
Okay, let's just dive right into this. $3 trillion. In June of 2023, Apple made history by becoming the very first publicly traded company to hit a staggering valuation of $3 trillion. It's almost hard to even comprehend that number, right? To put that kind of astronomical wealth into perspective for us, $3 trillion is roughly equal to the entire gross domestic product of India. Let that sink in for a second. A single tech company selling phones, computers, and services is generating as much economic value as one of the largest, most populous countries on the planet. It is an absolute triumph of modern business. But it wasn't a triumph for everyone involved. Which brings us to a frankly shocking number, $800. Imagine looking at an original, fading 1976 partnership contract. When Apple was founded, there was actually a third co-founder right alongside Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, a guy named Ronald Wayne. Now, he owned a 10% stake in the company. But just 2 weeks into the whole venture, he got scared. Fearing the business was going to tank and he'd lose his own cash, Wayne sold his entire 10% stake back to his partners for a mere $800. If he had just held onto that stake instead of letting fear take the wheel, today it would be worth around $100 billion. I mean, it is arguably one of the most expensive mistakes in the history of business.
So how exactly did they build this empire? Well, here is our roadmap for today's explainer. First up, the $3 trillion garage. Then, the great ousting, followed by the triumphant return. Finally, we'll decode their genius in the Apple strategy, and we'll look to the future with expanding in India.
All right, part one, the $3 trillion garage. Let's take a look at their humble beginnings.
The whole origin story kicks off in a Mountain View garage. You've got a young Steve Jobs who grew up completely surrounded by electronic components, wires, and circuit boards thanks to his adoptive father's workshop. He was always tinkering. Fast forward to 1971. A 16-year-old Jobs meets a 21-year-old tech genius, Steve Wozniak. Their shared passion instantly sparked this friendship, which super quickly turned into a business when they started selling blue boxes. These were little devices that let users make long-distance calls for free. They sold about 200 of them. This initial run proved they were the perfect match. Wozniak was the unparalleled technological brains, and Jobs had these absolutely unmatched marketing and sales skills. Fast forward a bit to March 1976. Wozniak builds this incredibly advanced computer for its time. They take the design to the tech giant HP, hoping to sell it, but HP rejects them outright, a flat no. They walk away completely empty-handed. But Jobs, being Jobs, convinces Wozniak they should just start their own thing. So, literally a month later, on April 1st, 1976, Apple is officially founded. They named their first machine the Apple I. Then, by 1977, they launched the Apple II, which was this massive runaway success that caused Apple's popularity to just explode. And in 1980, Apple went public, raising a cool $100 million in its IPO. They had made it. But as we know, success often breeds a little bit of conflict.
Which brings us to Chapter 2, the Great Ousting, a period of severe conflict and decline.
So the internal friction really sparked when CEO John Sculley was brought in to lead the company back in 1983. As the company was growing at warp speed, the differing visions of a visionary founder and a corporate CEO were bound to crash into each other, and this clash is perfectly captured by two massive events in 1984. First, the Macintosh launched with that legendary $1.5 million Super Bowl ad. This cinematic campaign was a visual and narrative masterpiece, highly successful, and Macintosh sales absolutely skyrocketed. But then came a catastrophic marketing misstep, the Test Drive a Macintosh campaign. The idea was simple enough. Buyers could take a Mac home for 24 hours using a credit card and just return it if they didn't want it. While people loved the idea, it was a total logistical disaster. Dealers got back returned computers that were so heavily damaged and smashed up after just 1 day of use that they couldn't even be resold. Apple took a massive financial hit on that one. To try and save the company from these mounting losses, CEO John Sculley had to hike up the price of the Macintosh and change a bunch of company policies. Well, Steve Jobs was furious with these decisions. The internal clashes reached an absolute boiling point. The Mac was failing to beat IBM, sales were plummeting, and the boardroom basically turned into a battleground. Ultimately, John Sculley convinced the board to push Steve Jobs, the very guy who founded the company, out the door. With Jobs gone, Sculley rapidly expanded Apple's product lines, launching a ton of completely disconnected devices. Initially, it kind of seemed to work, but within a decade, this incredibly bloated strategy led to massive losses, pushing Apple right to the edge of bankruptcy.
But hey, you can't keep a visionary down for long. Part 3, the triumphant return, saving Apple.
By 1997, things were so bad that Apple's desperate board of directors realized they needed their founder back to save this sinking ship. Jobs officially rejoined in 1997 and executed a truly ruthless turnaround plan. It was an absolute masterclass in strategic focus. He didn't try to fix everything at once. Instead, he basically took an axe to the confusing, bloated product list. He slashed away all the mediocrity and forced the entire company to focus purely on a few core, premium devices. By the time he became the official CEO again in 2000, Apple had completely regained its identity. Products like the colorful iMac started making huge waves in the market again. But honestly, that was just the warm-up.
Because in 2007, everything changed. Steve Jobs launched a product that changed the world forever, the iPhone. It wasn't just a product announcement. It was literally one of the greatest masterclasses in marketing and entrepreneurship in history. We can all imagine that iconic photo, right? Jobs standing alone on a dark stage, presenting a single gleaming device that could just do it all. He painted a picture of the future, and the entire world bought in.
Tragically, Steve Jobs' renewed journey with Apple was cut short when he passed away in October 2011. It was a profound loss of a modern master of marketing. Investors completely panicked, terrified the company would just sink without its visionary leader. But they severely underestimated his successor, Tim Cook, who had joined Apple back in 1998 and played massive roles in developing everything from the iPod to the iPhone, took the helm. With a remarkably steady hand and brilliant operational strategy, Cook didn't just keep the ship afloat, he carried the torch forward, scaling the company all the way up to that breathtaking $3 trillion peak.
So we know the history now, but let's transition to the actual mechanics of their business. Part 4, the Apple strategy. Let's decode this success.
I want to ask you, the viewer, this direct question. What makes Apple so extraordinarily special? Why do they dominate so thoroughly? I mean, they aren't always the first to invent a technology, and they certainly are not the cheapest. So what exactly is the secret sauce?
The answer is the Apple experience. They realized a long time ago that they are not just selling hardware products. They are selling an experience. They're selling happiness, a perfectly seamless lifestyle, and undeniably, they are selling status. Visually, they communicate this everywhere. Their logo is incredibly clean, beautifully simple, giving their products this unique premium identity. By heavily focusing on premium materials, stunning unboxing aesthetics, and that super satisfying in-hand feel, they meticulously craft a deep emotional connection with the user.
Let's walk through their actual strategy playbook. First, a simple and clean design language that makes technology look approachable but still super premium. Second, their ads don't just list a bunch of boring technical specs. They tell engaging stories that clearly imprint on the customer's mind. Third, they treat the packaging and the unboxing like it's a sacred ritual, which totally enhances that initial feeling of joy. But the fourth point, that's the real trap. And I mean that in the best way possible. They create an inescapable ecosystem of convenience. When you buy an Apple product, the high quality and the way it seamlessly connects with literally every other Apple device you own makes it incredibly inconvenient to ever leave for a competitor. This ecosystem is what transforms casual buyers into a dedicated fan base, an army of supporters willing to literally wait in physical lines for hours just to get their hands on the newest release.
Furthermore, they've completely mastered the art of turning standard market features into Apple innovations. When they introduced the iPhone X, they didn't just add a basic password lock. They added Face ID, a totally seamless facial recognition system. With the iPhone 14, they took the universally disliked screen notch and turned it into the visually stunning dynamic island. They transformed a hardware limitation into a highly celebrated software feature. It's this constant functional and visual innovation that absolutely keeps them on top.
Finally, we get to the last piece of their strategic puzzle. Part 5, expanding in India and their retail growth.
Because, as we know, selling a digital lifestyle requires a very real physical presence.
Apple knows that for people to truly buy into the ecosystem, they need to experience the magic firsthand. They can't just rely on website sales alone. That is exactly why physical retail is absolutely crucial. Recently, they executed step 1 of their expansion into one of the world's biggest markets by opening their very first physical stores in Mumbai and Delhi. Step 2 is all about the physical environment itself. Featuring stunning architectural designs, these stores allow customers to touch, hold, and visually experience the premium quality of the Apple ecosystem before they ever even spend a dime. And they are accelerating this big time. Step 3 involves a plan to open 3 more stores across India by 2025. Only time will tell exactly how massive this expansion will become, but their track record is frankly pretty intimidating.
From a dusty garage in California to a $3 trillion empire shaping global culture, Apple's story is just a profound lesson in focus, marketing, and the ultimate power of user experience. So, I want to leave you with a thought to reflect on right now. Look down at your desk, or maybe in your pocket. Which Apple product is your absolute favorite, and how has their strategy worked on you? Think about that as you analyze the businesses around you. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.